When I was a younger man, growing up in the wilderness of northeast Alabama, I could have aptly been described as a farm boy. Mucking stables, hauling hay, feeding animals, you name it, and I probably did it at one time or another. But my first real job was working on a farm near my childhood home for an elderly couple. There, too, I was responsible for mucking stables, pitching hay, and feeding animals. Now, you may be asking yourself what kind of farm it was that I worked on, and I'm very happy and very proud to tell you that for 2 years I was a herder of goats. Now, a few words about goats. In my experience, they are stubborn, they are smelly, they are mischievous, and sometimes they are downright mean. They do not do what you ask of them, and if you try to lead them somewhere they do not wish to go, they will resist you with all their might. A determinedly stubborn goat is like a tree planted by the waters, and it shall not be moved. Now, to be fair, I know nothing of herding sheep, or rather, shepherding sheep. I knew people who had sheep, and those animals always seemed pristine and peaceful to me. However, I'm quite sure that that profession has horror stories of its own. In today's gospel lesson, Jesus tells us about his experience with the sheep and the goats. To put it curtly, sheep go to heaven and goats go to hell. Or at least it would seem that way at first blush. Jesus sets up a dichotomy between sheep and goats for a didactic purpose. As ever, Jesus is teaching us and the rest of his disciples about the nature of the children of God. The sheep, he explains, are those who feed the hungry, welcome the stranger, clothe the naked, and visit and care for the sick and those in prison. The goats, apparently, do none of this. And I should probably take a moment to say that none of this has to do with the senior class who has been divided into the sheep and the goats. I feel certain that there have been many times in our lives when we have failed in some of the same ways that these goats failed. Times when we ourselves did not feed the hungry or clothe the naked. Our hope for grace, it seems, may be put out to pasture. But when Jesus sets up a dichotomy like this, he isn't doing it to say, if you put one toe out of line, sir or madam, it's the hellfire for you, no questions asked. Jesus uses these dichotomies to illustrate the reality that exists within all of us. For all of our sheepishness, there exists within us some goatiness as well. For all of those times that we do those things that are just, there are those times that we get it just plain wrong. Jesus highlights the differences that exist within us so that we too may see that there is good with the bad, and it is the good that we should cling to. In other words, in with the sheep and out with the goats in all of us. Back in the 22nd chapter of Matthew's Gospel, Jesus lays out for us the basic tenets of proper human behavior. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind, and you shall love your neighbors as yourself. That is what it means to be a sheep. That is what it means to sit at the right hand of God, the honored side, the exalted side. Jesus' parable is another way of stating the message that Leviticus is trying to send, and Jesus says as much. On this hangs all the law and the prophets. One of Jesus' best friends was a writer by the name of Flannery O'Connor. She is quoted as saying, "When you can assume that your audience holds the same beliefs you do, you can relax a little and use more normal ways of talking to it. When you have to assume that it does not, then you have to make your vision apparent by shock. To the hard of hearing, you shout, and for the almost blind, you draw large and startling figures." In this parable, Jesus draws a large and startling figure to pay attention to, especially during this time of Lent. As we head towards the Paschal feast, we must look within to see where the goat lives inside of us. As stubborn as that goat may be, we must wrestle out the urges and tendencies that we all have to resist the love of God. And at the same time, we must not falter in doing for those who cannot do for themselves.